I wanted to talk about another charlatan in archaeology, and it's a character that some of you may have come across. He's a chap by the name of George Nash. He's apparently been a doctor of archaeology and a professor of archaeology, and my dealings with George Nash have been on two occasions. The first time it was for a conference that I'd organised for Archaeology Cymru, and the year I think was 1997, and he'd come along and he'd done this lecture for us, and what happened was that he left behind a load of slides because he was writing a book at the time with Logiston Press, and that as far as I was aware, that was it. He didn't want the slides back, and that was where we left it. Anyway, the intermittent dealing with him was when a discovery was made in Cattle Cave on the Gower, and it was made public that there was this cave art at Cattle Cave, and it was common knowledge where it was in archaeology. So I had gone to this cave in 2012, and I'd gone in there, and it seemed that the cave art had been, somebody was trying to sort of hack out the rock. So I made it public directly to the newspaper where the location was, knowing full well that the establishment would react and put a cage on it and block access. So that's exactly what happened, and it meant that nobody's going to be able to steal it. So that made me a bad name in archaeology, but to get things done in archaeology, to protect sites, you've got to reveal the exact spot, and then the fraternity panics and they actually do something. They should have been protected in the first place before it was damaged. So this all comes down to George Nash not really understanding that if this is going to be made public, then it needs to be protected, which is something he didn't do. He was on his glory trip. Another intermittent time was after the event I'm going to tell you. A discovery was made in the valleys, and I've actually written about this, but it's somewhere in the valleys, and he had identified a cut mark on a stone. However, the other detail on the stone he completely missed. Now, this is a guy who's supposed to be able to identify stuff on rocks, so he missed some other sort of carvings on the rock which were really, really obvious, which we discovered. And then I started to doubt this guy's professionalism. And the guy's professionalism is completely in disarray when I say this. It was an Archaeology Cymru trip. It was to North Wales, and we were visiting prehistoric sites and Roman sites in North Wales. And it was Bachlodi the Garas, the sort of giant's apron burial chamber, Bachlodi the Garas. And the burial chamber is really badly presented. What they've done is put a concrete dome above it, and it's like the stones in there are sort of decaying because of the dampness in there now. Anyway, we had permission off Cadw to visit there, we needed to collect the key from the local shop on Anglesey, which we did. It was a big long key, it was. And it was an excursion. So the year itself was 2000, and I think it was 2015 or 16, one or the other. And so we went in there, and it was all barricaded off, and we had the key from Caddy. We had permission to be in there. We were the party that had permission to be there that day when we were there. We were the ones who were the license holders to go in there. Permission from Caddy and all the rest of it. So when I say cordoned off, you sort of go down a little corridor, and there's a concrete roof above you, and there's this metal grate. And in front of the metal grate was all this sort of plasticky stuff. And inside, I could hear voices. And so I started twiddling about with the key on the lock. And then this guy should come to the gate. And he recognised me, and it turned out to be George Nash. Right? So I said, look, we got permission to be here. What are you doing here? And he said, all right. They had made a copy of the key. Yeah? They had made an illegal copy of the key to go into this chamber. I actually held the official key. He had made an illegal copy of the key. He had no right to be in there, right? So he had two of his colleagues. And we went in there, and it was like a bad atmosphere. He said, hi, karl-james, really patronising and condescending. And obviously he wanted us out of there as soon as possible. So anyway, it was very menacing. And the two females that he was with, he spoke to them like dirt anyway. He was like this really masculine, sort of chauvinistic pig sort of thing. He treated these two women in there like absolute dirt, right? Because they were women, right? He looked down on them. He actually looked down on the women in my party as well. And they told me afterwards that the way he had actually treated them was abysmal, because they were women. He's a chauvinistic pig. So the women actually left, and I was left with a couple of the guys from the party. I think 3 guys from the party. And he was talking away to one of the guys, Roger. And one thing I noticed, right, was that there was a stone that he was taking rubbings off. A sandstone that he was taking rubbings off, right? And he had like a transparent sort of tracing paper. Well, actually, I think it was just like transparent plastic. But anyway, he had actually blue tacked them on, right? And onto this sort of stone that was protected, scheduled ancient monument, there was blue tack, right? And I looked down on the ground, and one bit of blue tack actually had some of the stone on it, right? So every time he'd be putting blue tack on there, it'd be taking bits of the surface off, which is actually an offence under the Scheduled Ancient Monuments Act. So he was damaging the stone. And he was taking a rubbing off there, which and I was absolutely appalled. I was absolutely appalled. Two other colleagues and him, supposed professional archaeologists, were damaging the archaeology physically in front of us, blue tack and it was horrific. And no care was taken to do the rubbings off this stone properly. There are other ways you could have done it. You could have you could have had the plastic sheet around the back, tape the plastic sheet tight, and therefore you would not be taking any of the surface off with any blue tack or any. You could have done it easily, right, and protected the stone. So there was a bad atmosphere in there. he was really condescending, talking down to me, and so I shook his hand. I wish I never did, right? And I walked out, right? Said goodbye and walked out. Anyway, I sort of I locked him back in there with my key, with the Caddo States key, not his key, right? So I went to go off, right, and I hung around there, and it had all gone quiet, and I just hovered, and then I heard, because one of the guys, Roger, right, because Roger had gone off then, and one of the women said, to George Nash, "Oh, George, who was that guy you were talking to, the elderly one?" And he referred to Roger. "Oh, that silly old fart I was talking to. Yeah, he's nobody." He was really slagging Roger off. I've come across him before, he's just this old guy that talks. He doesn't know anything about archaeology. And I thought, right, okay, bastard. Roger had been one of my students for years. I wanted to go in there and knock the bastard out, but I didn't. Wish I had now. Anyway, do you know what I wanted to do? The next bit is shocking. What I wanted to do, right, is I wish I had another padlock, so I'd have padlocked the bastard in there, right? It was on a Saturday and Sunday. He could have screamed and whatever to get out. Wouldn't be able to get hold of Caddo. Brilliant. Then one of the women said, "Oh, who was the other guy?" "Oh, Karl-James Langford. He's trouble, he is. He's best to avoid him. And he's not an archaeologist, and he doesn't know anything about archaeology." And he was really slagging me off, and I was just standing there thinking, right, one day I will be getting my own back at you. And I was just, what a two-faced, slimy, dirty little character George Nash is. Horrible, horrible man. And do you know what? Hopefully he gets to hear this recording. And if he does, George Nash, at least I can face you to call you a prick. Because that's what you are. You know very little about protecting archaeology. You don't know much about archaeology. You can't identify archaeological stuff in the field. And you just take and take and take other people's research work. And I know another archaeologist whose work you stole from, right? So George Nash, right? Everyone avoid George Nash. Don't have anything to do with him, right? He's a con merchant and a charlatan. This is from Karl-James Langford. At least I've got the face to face you. You talked about me behind my back. This is the troublemaker. Thank you very much, George Nash. Anyone else who's come across this slimy little turd, George Nash, just put it in the comments box, and I'd like to know more about him if you've ever come across him. Don't buy any of his books. He's just bogus. And he used to claim he was a professor of archaeology, but with Bristol University. No. He couldn't teach archaeology. He just couldn't teach it. He doesn't have the ability. Thank you very much. Keep watching. Keep supporting. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and press the blue button, join. Thank you very much. Good. Got that off my chest.